Hello, Guy. Welcome to the podcast.
Oh, thank you very much for having me as your guest.
Yeah, I was going through your profile. I was trying to see where you were raised. How did you make your way to California and eventually Apple? And I realized that you were born in Hawaii.
Yes.
And then moved to California for college. I want to get to know about your childhood. Did you have a very privileged upbringing? Because
no, I did not have a very privileged upbringing. Don't get me wrong, though. We were not struggling, dirt poor, hungry, not clothed. I had a comfortable lower middle class upbringing, but by no means am I from a rich family.
Interesting. So, did you have a dad who was extremely influential in your life? Did you have?
Yes, both parents were there. I had a very good childhood. I don't have any traumas to recover from, or I don't have any of those kind of stories. I've been very fortunate in my life.
Interesting. So now that you look back at the degrees that you got, so you started off with psychology, then did law for a little bit, and then moved to Los Angeles for your MBA. Now that I look back at your degrees, it feels like they lined up extremely perfectly for a career in marketing. Did you always know what you wanted to do?
Well, the reason why I'm laughing so hard is, as you look back, and maybe as I look back, it looks like it lines up perfectly, and I absolutely had a great plan. But that would be a mistaken interpretation of. There was no plan. I swear I majored in psychology because it was one of the easiest majors to find at Stanford, and then I liked business. I did not like the law, and so that's that. But there was no I was so careful and planned my life, not at all. And Steve Jobs addressed this in his Stanford commencement speech. He said, you can only connect the dots looking backwards, and I am living proof of that.
Interesting. Yeah, I heard in one of your speeches that you were extremely accepting and about nepotism to get into Apple.
I revel in nepotism.
Yeah. You vividly recollect how your roommate at Stanford was, played a role in you getting a job at Apple. It is very rare to find people who accept nepotism, but sometimes it's not how you get in, but what you do after.
Exactly. So, if you get in because of nepotism, but you're an incompetent, lazy loser, then you're still an incompetent, lazy loser. So what's important is not how you get in, but what you do once you get in. And this applies whether you're the boss's son or daughter, or you're the janitor or the receptionist, or in my case, the evangelist. So it's not how you get in, it's what you do once you get in.
Yeah. The term evangelist, I don't think it was popular back in the early 80s. And I think your role at Apple had a huge role in popularizing the term.
Yes.
What was the initial days at Apple like?
The initial days at Apple, that were just amazing. It was, I don't know, I hope everybody has a chance to work for a place like the Macintosh division of Apple, because we were on a mission to prevent worldwide domination by, the thought police. And so we were standing up for freedom and expression and all that good stuff. And we were led by Steve Jobs, who was a very scary guy, but, you get over it, or maybe you don't get over it, but you at least you learn how to deal with it. And I would not trade those days for anything. I am where I am because of Steve Jobs and the Macintosh division of Apple. And challenging as it was, I look back on those days with fond regards. And if I could do it again, I would do it again in a second.
Yeah, you have recently come up with a book, Think Remarkable, and it, aligns a lot like the Apple ad of Think Different. And we will get into that a lot more eventually in this podcast. But working with Steve Jobs, I've heard that he was an extremely tough guy. I think you briefly mentioned in your statement.
He was.
But one of the things that I noted about him is that, he gets things very simplistically. Like I remember an interview of NPR that was done in probably 1994 or 95, where he explains the concept of object-oriented programming or classes, where he says that classes have done to programming what the assembly line has done to manufacturing. And nobody had explained the concept of classes so simplistically like he did. Was that one of his extremely positive traits, that he could understand it so much differently that
I think he could understand it. He could also explain it, and that's a rare combination of people. And so he also had such a force of personality that, frankly, even if you didn't quite understand it, you believed it. Which is the real test.
Yeah, some people say if you can't convince them, confuse them, right? So,
well, I don't think that was his strategy, but I think he pretty much convinced everybody. He didn't have to resort to confusion. He had just the sheer intellectual power. He had vision. And if those two failed, he was intimidating. So if you put those three together, you really have someone who's quite a leader.
Yeah, I mean, the example of Steve Jobs and yourself, you ended up co-founding software companies, after you moved out of Apple. And for someone who does not have a technical degree, or someone who is not a programmer, what were some of the challenges, or do you just hire a great team of individuals to build the company?
Well, I mean, you say just hire a team of great individuals as if that's an easy thing to do. But, fundamentally what I've learned doing the research for this book and my podcast is that basically there's two essential functions. One is somebody's got to make it, and second is somebody's got to sell it. And you need those two kinds of functions. Everything else is secondary. And so if you know how to make it, you better find somebody who can sell it. And if you can sell it, you better find somebody who can make it so that you have something to sell.
Yeah, and you sum it up in your book about saying that some things need to be believed to be seen. And I think that's an extremely powerful statement. I think it lines up a lot with how Apple has evolved through the years. What have been some of the things that probably were way ahead of their time back in your days at Silicon Valley in the probably late 80s or the 90s?
Well, you're asking what have I seen that were early or?
Way ahead of their time, where people believed in something that was non-existent.
Before they saw it?
Yeah.
Well, I mean, Macintosh is clearly an example that when it came out, there was no other popular graphical user interface computer. Everything was sort of an MS-DOS Apple II world. And so the developers that I worked with, they had to believe that Macintosh, with its completely different UI, would succeed, and they should bet their companies on writing software for a computer that really had no installed base, that didn't exist. And the same thing happened with iOS. That people were writing iOS apps before there were millions of phones, and I think that just takes a leap of faith. And you're not going to be right all the time, but if you are right, the returns are enormous.
That is wonderful. I remember seeing one of your interviews with probably CNBC or Bloomberg, I can't recollect, where you said that you don't get excited about the next Apple product anymore. This was probably 4 or 5 years ago. Recently Apple has come up with the Apple Vision Pro. Have you had a chance to try it out? What have been your impressions?
Well, okay, so this is kind of a clue and a tell, because listen, I read all the reports about that, and I didn't even go try it. I have not, to this day, I have not tried it. And there are people who I respect very highly who have a very high opinion of it. And even after that, I'm still not that curious. And I can afford to pay $3,500 for that, but I just, I don't see the point. And maybe I'm just getting old, but I wish Apple would make stuff that I would want to go and stand in line, or get there at midnight for an 8 a.m. opening so I can be one of the first people to get it. But there hasn't been anything like that. Were there lines like that for the VR headset?
I think there were. I mean, just because it's from Apple.
Yeah.
But I believe the price point was too high to have a long line, but I'm sure people were excited about it.
Yeah, well, it's what, $3,500 US?
Yeah, it is.
That's a lot of money. Yeah. You can buy 3 really great MacBooks for that.
We'll see how that goes. But people are loving it. People are definitely seeing the difference between, let's say, a Meta Quest versus an Apple Vision Pro. But I think a lot of people are saying that, is it worth $3,500? Probably not. That's been the comment.
Well, I mean, that's not a good sign, because if it was that remarkable, people would not be saying that, right? I mean, there's a line of reasoning that says, people measure the value of something and do this cost-benefit analysis. But truly, what you want to create something so sexy that it just makes your head explode and you lose all touch with reality and finance. You just go buy it. And I don't think that's happened.
That has not happened for sure.
Yeah,
absolutely.
But maybe we're being unfair, because that Apple lives a life of a double-edged sword, right? So you charge a lot, people expect a lot. So when you charge a lot and people expect a lot, don't be surprised, because the reason why you're so profitable is because you charge a lot. So you got to live up to the expectations. That's not their fault.
That is so true. And I feel like Apple also has had the power to dictate the market in a way, because, people were paying, I don't know, less than or a few $100s for a phone till a point. And then iPhone came and it was priced at, probably $500 or $600. People were shocked at the price, but slowly
it was worth it.
Yeah, they started to realize it. And now a phone worth $500, $600 is not an anomaly anymore. So who knows whether...
And, I don't know. I think the phones that I'm buying, this is like, the 14 or 15 or whatever number we're on, they're about $1,000, I think, which is, the $1,000 phone, you can buy a pretty good laptop too now, right? And who would ever thought that those two things would cross or even be close?
Exactly. Yeah, that's what Apple has done over the years. So I am expecting that would be the case with Vision Pro as well, where, it is okay. It will eventually become okay to charge the $3,000.
But I got to tell you something, that I have $3,500. I could go buy it. I just think it's dopey to be walking around or wearing that. I don't know. It's just dopey. Here's a good analogy for you. It's kind of the Cybertruck of of headsets, right? Like when you wear that and when you drive a Cybertruck, you are basically screaming, I want you to look at me. I want attention, right? And I don't necessarily want attention. Not that kind of attention.
Yeah, that makes total sense. Guy, a lot of powerful statements you've made in your book. I've had a chance to go through some of them. And some of those powerful statements really stand out. And you're a big believer in don't pursue your passion, but pursue your interest. As a 19 or 18, 19-year-old who is just entering college, they are always advised to follow their passion, but it might be too early for them to realize what their passion is. You recently commented
I would
that.
say. Well, I think it's too early to realize what your passion is. You need a lot more data and a lot more sampling. And by saying that you should be finding your passion and pursuing it, I think it sets too high a bar that, you're supposed to find your passion with a capital P, and it should be instant love, and you want to dedicate yourself to this thing instantly. And it also implies that, you fall in love and you're instantly good at it. And I'm telling you that I've interviewed 250 remarkable people, and very few people said, yeah, I tried something and I was instantly good at it. And so, that's what I pursued. And I've interviewed people who are just at the top of their game and at the top of their industry. I can't recall anybody saying, oh, yeah, it was easy. It was easy to be a writer, easy to be a painter, easy to be anything. Part of the growth mindset is you're willing to pursue something even though it starts off hard and bad.
Yeah. And what but better example than Christy Yamaguchi, right? I mean, what a remarkable story. I think you mentioned.
Yeah. I mean, finishes 12th.
Yeah. And but I feel like in sport, it is so much harder to understand if you're good enough, because it doesn't a lot of physicality involved in it. So let's say, for example, someone who is 5'6" or 5'7", there is only so much that they can be good at in athletics or high jump or something. So how does one find the right balance between, I'm just going to call it ROI, where is it worth pursuing something?
I don't think that there's a really great way to judge that, because it's possible to come up with exceptions to everything, right? So there have been players in the NBA who are 5'5", right? And there are players who are 7'5", and the average is 6'5". So it can be done. But having said that, maybe those are the 2 or 3 people in the world who could play at 5'5". Now, on the other hand, in the NBA, there's probably, I don't know how many teams there are. Let's say 25 teams at 20 players is 500. So there's 500 NBA players out of the millions of people who play basketball, and out of the 500, there's 5 or 4 that are under 6 feet. And so you look at that. So the odds of being a professional NBA player are, I don't know, 1 out of 100, and then if you're that short, it's 1 out of the 100, and pretty soon you're at 0, right? But maybe that applies to athletics, because so much of it is determined by just sort of your physical equipment. But I'll tell you something. I think that even if you took equally talented people in professional sports, and one person had the growth mindset and the grit attitude, with the same amount of natural ability, that person is going to go further than the person without those, right? So, let's face it, to succeed, a lot of things have to fall into place, including luck. And people don't ever talk about luck, but luck is very important. I mean, the fact that we can even talk and be like this, like, we are lucky. Where do you live?
San Jose.
Okay, so you live in San Jose. I live in Santa Cruz. Right now, imagine what our life would be like if we're Palestinians in the Gaza Strip, right? And what did we do to deserve to be born in Hawaii, or where were you born?
Yeah, South India. Yeah, Kerala.
Okay, so you were born in South India. I was born in Hawaii. We didn't do anything to deserve that, right? We just it was ours, right? And, what would we be in other countries?
Yeah, that is something that I think about. There is an equal probability that we could have been born in Afghanistan or Syria, any of those war-stricken areas, or even Taiwan, which faced a major earthquake recently. People talk about nepotism, and sometimes only the top ones get the blame or the word attached to their name, called nepotism. But I feel like in every sense of the word, in every scale and in every class of society, we are all privileged in one way or the other. And I feel like there is some form of nepotism or the other, which you can call it luck or privilege or nepotism, whatever.
Well, right? But, listen, there are people who, I mean, you take an example like, let's say, Donald Trump Jr. or Eric Trump or Ivanka Trump. So they get hired by their father, the president of the United States. Clearly, that's nepotism, right?
Yeah.
But what do they do with that? Nothing, right?
Yeah.
So, I rest my case. It doesn't matter how you get the job. It depends on what you do with your job once you get it. That's the key.
Yeah, that is so true. Yeah. And I feel like, the higher or the more power you have, somehow I feel like the accountability is much less. Like,
Yes.
for instance, they goof up something. They should be way more accountable than they are held accountable.
Yeah.
Which I don't understand.
And you are absolutely, they should be held to an even higher standard, right? And if you look at the British royal family, like what did any of those people do to be quote unquote royal and noble, right? They were just born. Now, you could make the case that, Guy, you don't know what it's like to be in the British royal family. It's a major pain in the ass, blah, 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 which is very possibly true.
Mental struggles and tabloids writing about you and all of that. Yeah.
Yeah, but you know what? It seems to me that if any of those people were really sick of this, they could just say, hey, I'm out of this. I'm going to go, I'm going to go move to, I don't know where, and I'm going to go get an education. I'm going to make it on my own. I don't want to be known as Prince whatever. I'm just going to do my own thing. But I don't see a lot of that happening.
Not a lot.
Yeah.
Yeah. And same with, the prince and princesses in Saudi Arabia, for instance. Yeah, nobody is going to leave that and go. Which means that.
Also, let's not say this is only a non-American issue, but look at all the kids of billionaires, right?
100%.
Must be so bad to be the kid of a billionaire. There's so much pressure on you. I bet you wish you were in Afghanistan, but
yeah, exactly. What you do with it is what makes all the difference. And one of the examples that come to mind is Rafael Nadal. He was born into a very privileged family, but I think his dad is a businessman, a lot of money, a lot of wealth, but look at him now. He made his name in a different field, top of his field. So, yeah. Very few examples, though.
Very few.
Yeah. Guy, you have come up with this extremely interesting book called Think Remarkable. What made you write it? What made you want to get on this journey? Because writing a book is hard, I know, because you have already said that, you have gone through 10,000 revisions, and you have Guy has an interesting list of places he wrote the book from Santa Cruz all the way till San Francisco. So it must have been quite a pain. So what made you go through this journey?
Well, I have this podcast called Remarkable People with Jane Goodall and Neil deGrasse Tyson and, Steve Wozniak. And now that I have 250 episodes, that's 250 hours, and there's 5,000 pages of transcripts. So I don't expect anybody to listen that long or read that much. So Madison Eismer and I, the co-author, we had to cut it down so that people could tap this information and inspiration. So at some level, I kind of believe that because we had this information and inspiration in our data set, we had kind of a moral obligation to clean up the data set and make it available to more people because we had so much value captured in that. So that's what we did. It took a year, and I'm very proud of this book. I think this book, it's going to be kind of, I hope, fingers crossed, it's going to be kind of timeless because, this book is not about, how to be the next tech bro or how to be the next entrepreneur, billionaire, or whatever. These are tactics and these are beliefs. I don't know about eternal. Eternal's a long time, but this is a book that the principles will last a very long time. This is not, there are people who write the biography of Elon Musk or the biography of Steve Jobs or, profiles of Mark Zuckerberg and all that. But I mean, 10 years from now, people might not know who Mark Zuckerberg is, right? And then even today, if there was a book about Mark Zuckerberg or Elon Musk, it's hard to imagine parents are going to say, I'm going to buy that book about Elon Musk, give it to my daughter and that my son so that they become like Elon Musk. It's hard to imagine that happening.
Yeah, and also people fade away. I mean, I think when sportsmen retire or sportswomen retire, they're not the same people anymore. They don't have the kind of fame that they enjoyed when they were playing. So
that's true of authors too.
But I think authors have a longer time span. So
yeah. I hope.
Guy, you are a big believer in putting your stones in first, and then
the big stones.
The big stones first.
Yes.
And you have always insisted and stressed on the fact that you have to have a close set of friends and family that you should be prioritizing along with your interest. We live in a world where there is a lot of articles written about loneliness and people not socializing enough. I think pandemic also played a very important role or played a key role in we all as a society becoming the way we have become. For you, what role does someone's family play in their success?
Well, I will tell you that my family is the most important thing to me beyond my career and beyond anything really. So that's just my priority. My 4 kids are the most important things to me in my life. Listen, I am not at the extreme of being a tiger dad where I'm, trying to live their life for them. But I think they are well aware that they're my number one priority. Second is surfing, but number one is my family.
We will get to that. I mean, I hear that you started surfing at the age of 60 and started playing hockey at 44. I mean, that is insane. You also talk about finding your ikigai or finding your purpose in life. And when I look at speeches or maybe essays written from, let's say, the 1970s to now, things have changed and evolved. Earlier people would be like, hey, go find your passion. And now some of the speeches are like, it's okay if you don't find your passion, don't sweat it. There are so many conflicting opinions and things have evolved over time. And you mentioned about the book wanting to stand the test of time. So I wonder, how do people who read or get exposed to speeches or essays like this kind of navigate through this? Like, what do I choose? There is so much information out there.
Nobody's ever asked me that question, and the answer is I don't know. Because yes, I may be telling you that you should just look for things that are interesting and pursue them. And then the next guest you have may say, you need to find your passion and dedicate your life to it. And frankly, both of us can find examples that prove our philosophies. And both of us can also find examples that prove that the other philosophy is wrong. And it's not at all scientific. And it cannot be scientific, because to prove this, you'd have to find a population of people who are equally equipped in equal environments. And you'd have to follow them for their lifetimes and see which one, and then you'd have to do a sample of, 100. So you need like 200 people, preferably identical twins, and with equal opportunities, equal talent, equal everything. And then one went on one path and the other went on the other path, and you compare results. And I mean, listen, I'm not a scientist, but I can tell you that sounds like an impossible experiment to control all the variables. So to a large extent, these kinds of books, business books, self-help books, personal psychology kind of books, you just got to read them and see what resonates with you. It's trial and error. If it was clear what the exact optimal path is, more people would be on that path. And you can see that, there's people on every path.
Yeah. There would only be one path, and there would only be one book that would sell, right? So,
exactly.
yeah. So
maybe I have that book.
I think it is very close to that. I think you have covered every base, which is what I liked when I read through it, and that is the beauty of this world, right? There is no one size fits all, and I think everyone has the opportunity to explore different kinds of authors and books and probably find a way of what resonates with them and then move ahead with that.
Well, I mean, just as I say, you should not find your passion. You should look for things that interest you. I would say that's true about books and, these kinds of philosophies. So sample a lot of different philosophies, and then see what works for you. I don't claim to be the center of knowledge. So I am a source of knowledge. I have a line of thinking, and God bless you if you like it. But if you don't and it works for you, something else works for you. Hallelujah. Hallelujah.
Yeah, I think it's remarkable to have such humility after authoring so many books. But yeah, props to you for that. Right now you're working with Canva. You're the Chief Evangelist of Canva. And Canva also has a remarkable story like Apple, probably back in the day. And I was reading about Melanie Perkins, who did 300 pitches before she got accepted. I mean, what a story. When you started onboarded into Canva, what was some of the things that interested you to take up the position?
Well, I think primarily what interested me is that it was like a Macintosh, right? So the first time you use Mac Paint, I think, many people are too young to know what Mac Paint is, but there was this product called Mac Paint, and it basically emulated being an artist with paint buckets and spray cans and brushes, and you could pick different things, and, you could quote be an artist for the first time. And I think Canva is just like that. It's a killer app, and it enables people to create designs that could not have created them before. Whereas Photoshop, you really need to learn that thing. I mean, it is a beast. Canva is not a beast. Canva is your friend. And so that's the kind of thing that appealed to me. That I have programs that are beasts in my life, and it's taken a long time to figure them out. And so, at the opposite extreme of Canva for me is Microsoft Word. So with Microsoft Word, based on using it for, I guess, like 20 something years, I can write a book with Microsoft Word. I can flip between the outline view and the page view, and I know how to use headings, and I know how to use outline. I know how to add styles to everything, but it's taken me a few decades to do that. But now I can do it. And, could I write a book with Google Docs? And the answer is no. Google Docs doesn't have enough power for me. So I guess I'm showing you that there's conflicts even within my life. I'm telling you, I love Canva because in the time that you can make a design with Canva, you can barely boot Photoshop, right? So that's how easy it is to use. On the other hand, Microsoft Word is a beast, and I don't know very many people who write books with it because it is such a beast.
Wow, that's I mean, what a remarkable story. I was reading about Melanie taking an
Yeah.
interest in things like kite surfing, where she went on to meet a venture capitalist. I think it is remarkable that the pursuit was so relentless, and Canva is what Canva is today.
It is a great story. And, when I tell people what I do, I tell them, well, I worked at Apple as chief evangelist, I work at Canva as chief evangelist, and everybody's all impressed, right? Because like two very well-known, successful companies, but I never tell them about the 30 years of failures between the two.
Yeah. I mean, that is everybody's story. And I think what makes Steve Jobs so remarkable, and I'm pretty sure there would be a lot more like him, is that, he came up with two life-changing, world-changing products twice after a span of, 20 plus years, which is the Macintosh and the iPhone or iPod.
Yeah. Well, I mean, but you know what? Like, you need to understand that it wasn't just Steve Jobs, right? So they bought the iPhone from some other company, and Macintosh, you could make the case that he went to Xerox PARC and he saw what Xerox PARC was doing. So if you want to look at the glass as half empty, you could say, Steve Jobs, he didn't do anything. He went to PARC, he copied that, he bought this company to do iOS. Like, what's the big deal? Okay, well, I'll tell you something. If you think it's not a big deal to do those two things and be Steve Jobs, you're delusional. I mean, at a very basic level, it takes great insight or maybe just pure luck. You gotta know what to steal. That's a skill. You need to know what to. I mean, if you walk in a museum and you can steal any painting, you gotta know what to steal. I mean, you don't take the sign for the bathroom, and that's a skill in and of itself.
Yeah. Oh wow! I never thought I'll hear that, but yeah, in this context, I think that makes absolute sense. Guy, I also learned that Mark Benioff, the co-founder CEO of Salesforce, worked with you as an intern at Apple. I'm pretty sure a lot of people would have worked with you, and you might have spotted some talent along the way. Do you see entrepreneurial traits in someone if they work with you so young? And what was your experience with? I know it was probably for a short period of time with Mark Benioff, but
listen, let me tell you something. I've had basically one intern in my life, and that's Mark Benioff. So I am one for one. Now, I will tell you that I'm one for one, but listen, if I would be lying to you if I told you that back in 1987, I clearly saw that Mark Benioff was someday going to be a billionaire and start, this humongous software company and build the biggest building in San Francisco. And, I knew if I was that smart and if I knew that, I would have funded Salesforce. Okay. So, I mean, it's not like I profited from him being a successful intern. So, I don't know how. Okay. Actually, I'll tell you how. So, I think a lot of it has to do with selective memory. So let's say that I had, 20 interns in my life, which is not true. I only had one. But let's say I had 20. And now we fast forward to 2024. And I tell you, 25 years ago, I could tell that Mark Benioff, he was the one that's going to do it. And I'll tell you something, that would be pure, unequivocal bullshit. I had no idea. And I mean, to take an extreme extension of that, I quit Apple twice and I turned Steve Jobs down for a third job at Apple, right? So, Guy, you're not so smart. You quit twice and turned down a job from the most valuable company in the world. What kind of idiot are you? And So, you got lucky with Mark Benioff, but you sure is a dumbass about the other things. So I mean, that's how it is. I mean, you just don't know. So, I think the advice to you, if you're listening to this podcast, is don't take any risk. Be nice to all your interns, because you just never know which intern is going to be a billionaire. Okay. You never know, man. Be nice to everybody. That's my theory. Be nice to everybody and sort it out at the end.
Yeah, and preferably don't burn bridges, so because you never know.
Yeah.
Guy, before we end this podcast, I mean, what an amazing conversation. I want to know why, or what was the reason behind you taking up surfing at the age of 60, and what were some of the challenges?
Well, okay, I took up surfing at the age of 60 because my daughter in particular really became an avid surfer. And I took up surfing. I tried surfing a few times, and I think it's the most exciting thing you can do that's legal. And I don't know if you ever have a chance to surf, the sensation that there's no motor, there's no engine, but you're moving along at, 12, 15, 20 miles an hour. And you did it all by yourself because of your paddling, and you just caught the energy and, power of Mother Nature. I mean, I guess you could say that about skiing too, but with skiing, you can understand because gravity, right? You're going down the mountain. So yeah, I mean, if you're used to falling, you know that gravity is a force, but with surfing, you're harnessing something that it's not as obvious as gravity. You don't need to time skiing. I mean, obviously there's issues with where you go and how you ski, but you know what I mean? It's more or less when you start skiing for that particular run, the ski slope is the same. It's not changing in real time. Whereas with surfing, it's changing in real time. And it's the most challenging thing that I have ever taken up, which is part of the appeal because, I divide the book into 3 sections: growth, grit, and grace. So the growth part is even being willing to take up surfing at 60, to delude yourself that you could learn a sport this hard at 60. The grit is that I took up surfing 10 years and I have not given up. I mean, I know a lot of people who start surfing and they give up after 1 or 2 times, but not me. I'm like 10 years into it, and I move our house so that we're closer to the water. I mean, I'm like into it. And I think that's how you make a difference. And, this book is about how to make a difference. And if you make a difference, then people will consider you remarkable. That's how it works. You don't decide to be remarkable. You do good things, and then people decide you are remarkable.
Yeah. Well, perfect way to end this podcast. Highly recommend Think Remarkable. It's available on Amazon and wherever you get your books. Thank you so much, Guy. It was...
Oh, thank you. Thank you very much for having me, and all the best to you. And if you ever want to take up surfing, just let me know. I'm, 1 hour from where you are. So.
Yeah, absolutely. Well,
you can wait till you're 60, but I might be dead by then. All right.
Yeah.
Take care.
Take care. Bye.